Hey guys, Matt here from Seeds of Awareness. Welcome to the Awakening series. This is episode 5, and in this episode I'm going to be talking to you about embodiment and shadow work. So embodiment is basically working to bring our true self, the deeper eternal spiritual self that I've spoken about in a number of my previous videos. Working to bring that part of ourselves to the forefront of our being and then merging it with the physical body so that our true spiritual self shifts from being just a passive, really non-active kind of observer in our life that's not really having that great an impact over our life ambitions and our daily activities, to basically coming to the forefront, merging with the body and taking over control over the ego personality and over the body. Because with most people in society, it's the opposite. Firstly, their true eternal spiritual self is, for most people, it's still asleep, and therefore it's very, very passively observing everything they're doing from the background, and maybe only pops up every now and then in those rare sort of special moments in amidst their kind of like daily life. Maybe it'd be a moment with their family member that someone loves, or a sunset, or just some special moment where a deeper, truer self becomes fulfilled in that moment and they recognize that. But then with most people, it quickly gets sort of pushed to the back burner as the material world kind of engulfs them again with all their ambitions and stresses and desires and pursuits and all those sort of things. So for most people, what's at the forefront of their being is their ego personality and the drives, the primal drives of the body. And what that means is that they're very locked into ego consciousness. So most of their lives are based on a pursuit of material goals and acquiring possessions and building career and achieving this and achieving that and getting ahead of that person and competing with that. And there's nothing wrong with these things. It's not to say they're bad, but it's when someone's in ego consciousness, it means they're highly attached to these things. So if those things are taken away from them, they experience a lot of pain, and they experience a lot of stress and anxiety and panic if they're not achieving in those things. And then along with that, we've got the primal drives of the body, which is, a lot of people are locked into fight and flight mode because their body is just in a constant state of like panic and stress because it feels like it's not going to get its needs taken care of. And a lot of this is happening on an unconscious level. But in a nutshell, what it means is that people in this scenario, rather than having their spiritual self at the forefront, governing and controlling the ego personality and governing and controlling the body, which basically brings a sense of calm and equanimity and poise over everything they do. If they haven't achieved that, then they're very locked into the material world, which in my last video I discussed why the material physical world is an illusory world that we need to be careful not to be too identified with and too attached to. So embodiment is about having that spiritual awakening experience and then bringing the true eternal self from a passive observer in the background to an active engager in the forefront of our being. And this has a profound effect on everything in our lives, because basically everything we do, everything we believe, everything we strive for, every decision we make becomes built upon this foundation, this spiritual foundation of higher sort of spiritual morals and values. And therefore everything we do, if it doesn't fulfill us on that deeper level, we don't pursue it. And so many of the things that we used to care about and we used to strive for, and even people that we used to kind of hang out with and associate with, just sort of disappears because it's no longer meaningful to us, because we begin to realize the illusory nature of so many of the things that we once held so important. And so embodiment, it takes a lot of work. It's not just something that we have this spiritual awakening and then all of a sudden we're enlightened and everything that we do is spiritual and the ego consciousness is no longer in the way. It's not that case at all. For many, it's a lifelong process. It's actually becoming spiritually embodied is actually requires a lot of hard work. It's really not for everyone. It's a confronting process, and it's really a lifelong process. And I would nearly go as far as say it's a multi-lifetime process that we actually need lifetimes of lessons and experiences to actually get to a place where we're spiritually embodied. And I'm certainly not there yet myself. But I've come sort of far enough to be able to at least pass on what I've learned so far. And what I've learned is that to become spiritually embodied, we have to have the courage to confront our shadow. Now, the shadow self, which was a term sort of made famous and coined by the late psychologist Carl Jung, it refers to the part of ourselves that holds all of the things that we don't confront, and often all the things we judge as bad and we've condemned within ourselves, and often because our society has programmed us to condemn those things, programmed us to think those parts of ourselves are negative and bad. And with most people, their shadow self holds a lot of unresolved trauma, holds a lot of pain, holds a lot of guilt, it holds a lot of sadness, and holds a lot of fear, and holds all of the things that if we allowed ourselves to feel, it would bring up a lot of pain, panic, and anxiety in most people. And we live in cultures that don't teach us to know how to deal with those sorts of feelings and deal with those sorts of experiences. So what people do instead is they block it out, because that's a normal response to trauma. And most people have experienced, well, just about everyone has experienced trauma in their lives. It doesn't have to be something, there's different degrees of trauma, but most people have experienced some certain level of trauma in their life. It could be argued that growing up in our spiritually disconnected societies, where a lot of family units are fragmented, is a trauma in itself. And that's normally the experience for most people. But people have experienced different degrees of trauma, but a trauma is still a trauma. And the natural response to trauma, if it's not healed and resolved as a survival mechanism of the body, is to block it out. So that's what happens as children. We experience all these traumas, or we might have parents that were distant or not present, or didn't give us the attention we need, or things may have happened at school, or anything could happen. And we're so sensitive, we're such sensitive feeling-based beings as children, that when we experience that, the survival mechanism kicks in, we block it out. And then when we grow up in the society, and most people grow up in families in a society that's very repressed, doesn't give us space to actually talk about these things and feel about these things and purge these things. What happens is instead these traumas get locked up in the body as pains and wounds, and they become part of our shadow. Now, the only way to integrate the shadow is to actually confront the shadow. We have to actually go into the shadow, and we have to confront the wounds and the traumas that are there, including all the societal and cultural programming and the lies that we've been told in our society and the ways we've been manipulated. And the deeper you sort of go into, especially the elite circles of society and the secret societies and those sort of aspects of our world and the darkness that exists there, humanity itself has actually been traumatized to many, many degrees and has been deeply, deeply exploited. And that's something that is an unresolved trauma in most people, especially because we can carry a lot of our traumas from previous lifetimes that remain unresolved. So the only way to actually integrate the shadow is to confront it. And this can be a really painful and messy experience. Very, very painful and messy, in fact, because everything we've suppressed has to come up to the surface. And we need to do it also in a way that's kind of gentle enough on ourselves, because if we bring everything up too fast, then it can actually re-traumatize ourselves. That's why people have to be careful when they're pursuing self-work in this regard. A lot of people will turn to psychedelics, because psychedelics can break down the trauma barriers and break down the ego shell and bring a lot of the traumas to the surface, but often it's in a way that people aren't really ready for. So that's why a therapy and getting the sort of support from someone who's trained in these areas to help us through the early stages of our healing process and facing our traumas, it can be very, very important and very pivotal, because a trained therapist can actually help us help us deal with what's coming up. And I highly recommend seeking an embodiment sort of based therapist, someone who actually knows how to help you deal with the feelings coming up in your body, because a lot of psychiatrists or psychologists only deal with like the mental side of it, like working through the mental understanding of your problems, rather than helping you actually feel what's coming up in your body. Because when a trauma comes up, it comes up in the body, and it can just feel so overwhelming and cause us so much pain, and we haven't been taught how to actually feel into it and release it. Because it's not really generally accepted as normal or okay in our societies to cry and to scream and to express our rage and to express our pain and to express all the repressed things that we've got within us. So as I said, it is a really messy experience, and tears are going to come up, rage is going to come up, anger is going to come up, all the things that we've repressed within ourselves because society tells us it's not okay. Then you might be listening to this thinking, well, that all sounds fucking horrible. I don't really want to go through that. Or you might also be thinking, I don't think I've experienced much trauma. Well, you may be one of those rare people who haven't experienced much trauma. They are very rare, but we've got to remember that just because you may have not experienced a severe trauma, if you really analyze your childhood and contemplate on how much of a sensitive being you are, and we all are as children, then just think about the things that may have impacted you. And it could just be a family member, like a parent or mom or a dad, or not being there for you. That can be a trauma for a child. Or anything that causes us distress and neglect and pain as a kid that we've repressed. If you haven't confronted that, it will still be sitting within you. Now, the reason this is so important is because the spirit, our true spiritual self, can only go as far into the body, integrate as far into the body as we have integrated our shadow or cleared our shadow. So if we've still got blockages and traumas held in our body, then the spiritual self isn't going to actually be able to get into that body, because the spiritual self, or get into that part of our body, because the spiritual self communicates to us through feeling. I really believe that at our core level, we are feeling based beings, and that's the way that spirit communicates to us and allows us to communicates to us and allows us to express the kind of will and desires of spirit into the world through the way we feel. But when we've had trauma, we disconnect ourselves from the body so much that we no longer feel the body, and therefore we no longer feel spirit. And that's why most people are so trapped up in their heads in our society. Everything's just very head-based. We just live in this world of the mind and thoughts and intellect. And that's a fantastic tool, but if that's the only realm that we live in, then we're going to be disconnected from the body and therefore disconnected from spirit. So the only way to embody spirit is to come back into the body and then allow ourselves to feel spirit moving through us through that felt relationship with it. But if we haven't dealt with that shadow, if we haven't dealt with those traumas, and we're numb to the body, we're not going to feel spirit at all. Now, the other issue with not dealing with the shadow is something known as shadow projection. So most people would have everyone's experienced shadow projection, and everyone has definitely experienced someone else shadow projecting on them. This is when someone hasn't dealt with their shadow, and so therefore they then project their pain, because they haven't dealt with their pain or their trauma, they then project their pain onto you. And often this occurs mostly with close friends and family, because in kind of like acquaintance-based relationships, or relationships where like it's just amicable, maybe you only see them every now and then, or you bump into someone on the street or someone you see at work, they can uphold this personality mask, and everyone's walking around with these personality masks saying, yeah, everything's great, everything's fine, no traumas, no wounds in my world. But then once you develop a close relationship with them, say you start living with a person, or you get into a relationship with them, or you become a close friend, or they're a family member, then their shadow side that they're repressing starts to come out in different moments, particularly when they're under stress, or particularly when they've been drinking or taken drugs, or things aren't going well for them in their lives, that's when they'll start projecting their shadow onto you. And I'm sure most of you can relate and understand what I'm saying here. And we all know those people who we know that they've got pains they haven't resolved, and we know that they're so easily triggered, and all we need to do is say or do a certain thing and they'll all of a sudden get angry at us or snap at us or just attack us or try to shame us or guilt us. That is classic shadow projection. That is a person who hasn't dealt with their shit and is projecting it all over you because it's the only way they know how to express it. It's the only way they know. It's a cry for help, but they don't even know they're doing it most of the time. Most of the time, they'll once the episode's over, they'll just move on and act as if nothing even happened because their trauma mechanism of blocking it up will kick back in, and you're left going, well, that was fucked, and they don't even want to talk about it to me. This is bullshit. So if we don't deal with our shadow, we'll become one of those people who shadow project, and we don't want to become one of those people because it will push everyone else away. And also we shouldn't tolerate that from other people as well. We should never tolerate someone shadow projecting onto us. But aside from that, the really important thing here is that embodiment and shadow work really are really tie in together. They're very, very closely connected because we need to become embodied to sort of fulfill our lives as spiritual beings, to integrate the spiritual self in with the body so it becomes that active engager in our life rather than that passive observer. And to do that's so important, so that we're actually fulfilling what we came here to do as spiritual beings. And when we do that, so many of our fears and panics and worries fade away because we begin to really truly understand the illusory nature of this world, and the fact that even when the physical body dies and if the ego personality changes, we've still got this true spiritual self to that is the real us that lives beyond all these illusory changes of the physical world and the death of the body. So because of that, so many of our fears kind of evaporate and disappear. But also it ties so closely into shadow work because we can't achieve this embodiment, this spiritual embodiment, without confronting the shadow and without integrating the shadow properly, which, as I said, it's really, really hard work. It's confronting work, it's painful work, it's messy work, but it is really, really rewarding work. That's the thing. And that's why when we do spiritually awaken, we've got to be careful not to fall into that kind of new age love and light trap where we think just because we've awakened, that all we feel is happiness and bliss. That's a load of crap. That's just another way to avoid confronting our shadow. And we've got to be realistic with how hard a work it really is, but also keeping our focus on the positive side of it, which is that it is, as I said, so damn rewarding, because as we become spiritually embodied, we just, as I said, so many of our anxieties and fears vanish away in our relationships. We become connected on a much deeper level with the people around us, and we become much more fulfilled with everything we're doing. And it really is an amazing, beautiful experience. And the more we confront the shadow and realize that when we come out on the other side, this beautiful, amazing embodiment awaits us, the more we feel kind of like encouraged to keep going further and further with it. And also the more we deal with our own shit, the more we give space to the people around us to deal with their shit. And it creates this beautiful kind of like domino effect of healing. So once we heal ourselves, we give space to people around us, particularly our family members and our close friends who see the healing we're doing and are inspired by it. It gives, and they feel comfortable to open up to you as well. It creates this beautiful kind of like healing domino effect that spreads, and I believe that's the way we are going to really turn this world around, is through this grassroots revolution of spiritual awakening that kind of like starts from person to person, but it does require a lot of work. But as I said, the work is really, really worth it. So anyway, thank you very much for listening. This is a little bit of a longer one because it's a really, really important topic, but I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Please shoot me any messages in the comments section if you have any questions around this, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.